ready. Unlike anything that I've freeze dried before. Hello and welcome to Sage and Stone Homestead. If you have not met me yet, my name is Heather. This is our homestead overflow shed, which is a climate controlled area where we do our seed starting. We store some things that really can't be out in the cold, and we also house our freeze dryer here. One of the things I really like about having the freeze dryer in this space is I do a lot of freeze drying over the cooler months, and this thing does put out a little bit of heat. So it helps us not only preserve our food, but it actually does help us save on our energy bill. I know that's not what these things are known for, but if we can kill two birds with one stone, preserve some food and heat a space, that really does help us out. So we are going to be freeze drying today. This is Freeze Dried February. Thank you, Angela, over at the Inquisitive Farm Wife for again hosting. This is one of my favorite collaborations every year. I've got all the collaboration info down in the description box. If you are a regular viewer of my channel, you may know what this is. Just in case you don't, this is the homemade caramel that we make using our goat's milk. It is called Cajeta. It has goat's milk, sugar, baking soda, and cinnamon. And the reason I say it like that is funny story, and then we'll get right into it. If you happen to mix up your mozzarella recipe with your Cajeta recipe and you put in citric acid instead of baking soda, don't worry. The sweet cinnamony cheese that you happen to create out of that is actually quite good with apples. Anyway, I made another batch of Cajeta after I accidentally made cheese with the last batch, and we're gonna freeze dry this and see how it does. Now, because I messed up the first batch that I had tried this week and turned it into cheese, I really wasn't sure how I was gonna fill out the rest of the trays. One of the things that I don't necessarily like about freeze dryers is that in order to run them, you really need to fill them. There's different sensors on each shelf in there, and if you leave one of the trays empty, the sensor is going to read that tray dry, and it could mess with your batch. This is definitely not enough Cajeta to fill that large freeze dryer over there. And my original plan was to just freeze dry trays of milk alongside it. I actually have some milk right here that I freeze dried, looks like May of last year. Milk does very well freeze dried and we can always use it, but we're in a time of year where I'm not really bringing in a lot of milk, so me messing up with the Cajeta cheese that I made the other day really did kind of ruin my plan. But one of our channel members had the best idea. She said, Heather, freeze dry coffee along with it. Cajeta is what I put in my coffee. This is what I use as a natural or homemade coffee creamer, and so that is absolutely perfect idea. Thank you, Heather. We'd actually talked about wanting to freeze dry coffee before. My husband wants to use it in several different things, and we'll talk to him about that at the end when it all comes out, and we may even try some things with the freeze dried coffee. What I'm hoping for out of this Cajeta is to get it to come out of these little cubes and either be something that we can just eat on as is, or something fun to put in a jar and give away, so that little portions of the homemade coffee creamer can be shelf stable. This stuff I actually store in the refrigerator. I have heard of some people canning it. I'm just not sure that there are any safe or approved methods for canning the Cajeta, so this would make it shelf stable to anybody's standard. And these little portions are perfect. It's about 1 tablespoon for each little cell here. This Cajeta that I made today is still a little bit warm, which is good because it does solidify pretty well, really depending on how much you cook it down. I do have a video on how we make our homemade caramel. You do not have to use goat's milk. You can use cow's milk, and you can use store-bought cow's milk too. But see, it's basically like a yogurt. This has been sitting out for a few minutes. I pulled this out to show you and to also fill some extra cells here if I don't have enough of what I made today. Y'all, so good. And if you don't do sugar, I have made this with honey as well, and it works really well. I'll link the video where I made this with honey down below. So I've put a little pour spout on my jar here. I'm gonna do my best, but you know the rule. At least those of you who have been here a while, you know the rule. Make a mess or it doesn't count. It smells absolutely lovely. I have made this with the cinnamon, and I have made it with vanilla before. Both ways are great. And you also don't have to flavor it. It's great as is, that caramel flavor just from the sugar and the milk doing their thing with the baking soda. I have seen where people have freeze dried like the Werther's caramels on the candy setting in the freeze dryer, and that's very intriguing. That's something that I've always wanted to try. I hear that they puff up quite a lot. I really don't know what to expect out of this cajeta, but because it's not being run on the candy setting, I don't think it's gonna act like that. Who knows though, it could surprise us. We could have a bigger mess than I really had planned for. Here's what the tray of cajeta looks before freezing. This is the batch I made last week or the week before. It's lighter because I didn't cook it as long. So we've got that one, and then I've got one loaded in here already. And then the coffee, I'm actually gonna load the trays first and then pour the coffee in. It's a lot easier than trying to fumble those really awkward trays that are full of liquid. Your liquids are going to expand by about 10% in freeze dryer as liquid expands when it freezes. So just keep that in mind when filling the trays and try to make sure everything is level. I'm probably not gonna fill these all the way to the tippy top, but just good tips regardless. This coffee is room temp now. My husband brewed it earlier. I think he used espresso, and I'm very intrigued to see what this is like. I have freeze dried quite a few liquids before, bone broth and milk, and I think something else, I'm forgetting offhand what it was. But I'm always surprised with what is actually left behind in the freeze drying process. Oops, a little bit of a mess. Told you, you have to do it. Speaking of, do you call it caramel or caramel? I think I tend to go back and forth. I have lived a lot of places in the United States, but I think I tend to say caramel most frequently. A little bit of sludge there at the bottom. I didn't actually strain this through a coffee filter. I used a nylon mesh strainer, so there's a little bit of grounds in there. Well, at least in here. It's like that powdery stuff that sometimes is at the bottom of your coffee cup. Some people love that. I hate it. But okay, everything's loaded. Gotta remember to shut the valve back here. Press go, and then let it rip. So in a way, I want to say that this did not turn out as I expected that it would, but you heard me before. Like, this could go very wrong, and I get a lot of questions on the channel. Really, it's more like I get a lot of compliments on the channel. Heather, you handle it really well when things go wrong, and that is because I expect it. I feel like if you could sort of think into the future and think, how could this go wrong? Or if you see something go wrong with somebody else, think, hey, maybe one day that will happen to me. You can develop a plan, and so that when it happens, you're like, there it is, and you can move on. See, I've got the trays warming up now. It was in a pretty decent deep freeze, but I don't even know how I'm gonna get these out. One of our channel members has a lot of freeze dryers, and she thinks that this should have been pre-frozen in the deep freeze before putting in the freeze dryer. I know that with older models of freeze dryers, they had specific settings that you had to manually put in for things to work out well. You even had to set the dry time and set the dry temperature and things like that. More modern models of the freeze dryer aren't like that. You just click go and it does the thing for you. So it automatically freezes the food for you, and then it goes through the freeze drying process. Now, I do have my freeze dryer set to kick the pump on when the freeze dryer hits 0 degrees, and maybe all of the sugar that is in the cajeta could have stood to freeze a little bit deeper, but I don't know. Part of the freeze drying process is heat. I know that we think of this as a freeze dryer and we don't think of heat when we think freeze drying, but freeze dryers do heat up in order to go through the sublimation process, and I think that that had an effect on our sugar. But the coffee looks decent. By the way, we did restock our website, and these stickers and magnets are available if you would like one. So we'll start with the trays that I know are going to be easy to remove. This is the coffee. It's very, very fluffy and airy. Wow. That is unlike anything that I've freeze dried before. Look at that. Whoa. I was hoping that everything would fit in here as far as the coffee goes, and I think it will. This funnel that I have here, it's actually a part to a tomato sauce maker. It's a funnel to, I think, the Norpro tomato sauce maker. I got it at a local farm store. People ask me all the time where I got it. I assume you can find these online. This tray, very much the same as the other tray. That is so wild. I can tell that I'm touching it because I'm looking at it, but it's so fine that I can't really feel it. Weird. It smells amazing. Coffee cotton candy. Ooh, bitter. Whoa. Talk about strong coffee, not bitter, strong. Holy smokes. I am not one for black coffee. I will drink black coffee if I have to, but if I have a choice, I like to put Cajeta in it or brown sugar and milk, at least milk. I have a plan of getting the Cajeta out of there. It's gonna be a mess. Wow, that gallon's worth of coffee really did shrink down a lot. Holy moly. Yeah, just barely tamping it is less than a pint. Look at that. That's so neat. I'm gonna stick a desiccant pack in here just because there's always at least some humidity in the air, and that humidity that's in the air can and will be closed in with the coffee in the jar. That desiccant pack is there to absorb that humidity so that it doesn't ruin our coffee. Alright, here's the thing. The Cajeta is stuck to the top all along the length of the shelf here. It's kind of sticking out in some spots. So I mean, it's in there, and then this shelf is stuck in here because of the ice. I have a long cheese knife that I think I can wedge in there some, but I don't know. I was trying to get the trays out before I defrosted the machine so that the water in the machine wouldn't ruin the Cajeta, and I could at least put some of this in a jar too. Let's taste it while we've got it right here. Tastes like Cajeta. Crunchy Cajeta. It is yummy. Let me go get the cheese knife. We did it! Okay. Let's see how funny this is. Oh, oh man. The ants are gonna be insane in here. I'm gonna have to like vacuum. Okay, let me flip this. I hope you guys are amused. Oh, gracious. Oh, it's like peanut brittle. See that? That's really good. I am going to try this again. I think, obviously, the next time that I do this, I need to fill the cells much, much more shallowly, and then as it goes through the freeze drying process, it'll fill the cell up, and we will get what I was hoping for. That is a pure delight. Guys, this is not a fail. I know it looks like it, okay? But this is so good, I'm not even mad that I have to clean this. That less dramatic as it came out. Just as beautiful. Does anybody know if anyone in this collaboration is doing a freeze dryer cleaning video? Because that'd be great. I need to tune in for that one. I have cleaned the freeze dryer before, the trays and everything, because I had a little bit of a mold situation happen. Really, when you shut these off for an extended period of time, you should leave the door open just so that there's airflow. Just leaving the drain pipe open isn't sufficient enough. I was trying to keep things like stink bugs and ladybugs out of there because that sounds gross, but mold is also gross. You kind of have to pick your battles. I'd rather inspect for bugs and remove those prior to freeze drying than to deal with mold all the time. Can you even see this pile that's being made? We're almost done. I don't think this is the worst mess that I've ever made. One time I was cream separating with my goat's milk and the jar kind of vibrated away from the cream separator, and I was just spilling cream out onto the counter, and it went in between the cabinets, in between the stove and underneath the stove and oven. It was a whole mess. I think that was worse. This at least has a delicious outcome that is really not that far away from what I was hoping for. I was just sort of planning for less mess. Anyway, we are running out of time for me to get this video posted, so I don't have the time to show you exactly what we're going to be doing with the coffee in this video. But the plan that we have is, my husband tried to make a coffee jerky with venison this last season with the deer that he got, and he made a really strong espresso and marinated it in that, but after all was said and done, it really didn't have as much of a coffee punch as he was hoping for. And so the theory is that we can add this powder to some of the other liquids, and this will absolutely concentrate that coffee flavor without adding the odd texture of just adding in coffee grounds. We also think that we're going to be able to add this to our ice cream base and make a coffee ice cream. Really anything coffee flavored that you could find or dream up, this will help facilitate that. I'm really excited for this. This is very, very punchy, and I'm sure that in future vlogs and things, we will show you how we put this to use. Anywho, that is that. Thank you, Angela, again, for hosting this collaboration. It is always a blast. I made some messes, I made some mistakes, but you know what? I learned a lot along the way, and hopefully you guys learned a lot too.